everyone. Welcome back to Things We Read This Week. My name is Jordan Nanos. I'm back again with Hunter Almgren, and we've got an ominous episode for you. It's episode 13 on Friday the 13th, and for those watching on YouTube, we've got our nice virtual backgrounds, and Hunter's got a nice shirt on. Hello, Jason. How are you? What'd you work on this week?
Oh, I was at Camp Crystal Lake. There were some teenagers there that were completely unaware of their surroundings, and
Yeah, for those in the audience who are going to say, "Hey, this is actually supposed to be episode 12, not episode 13." Stop it with the negativity, okay? We're just enjoying ourselves here.
yeah. Hey,
Um,
you know what? 13 has been skipped far too often. Elevators skip 13, planes skip row 13. I mean, this 13 gets skipped way too much. So I feel like it's only fair we skip 12.
yeah, yeah. Stick it to the man here.
Exactly.
We like a
Exactly.
baker's dozen on things we read this week. Okay, so let's dig in. We had a big week. We're going to cover in this episode just a lot of releases. NeurIPS was this week. Google tried to upstage it with Willow, a new quantum chip. We had a couple articles about the impact of Gen AI and then some personal experience. So yeah, it's going to be yet another episode all about AI. But okay, first up, Google dropped a blog post talking about their new state-of-the-art quantum chip called Willow, which demonstrates error correction and performance way above the last release, the last announcement. The last time I heard about quantum from Google, they were claiming quantum supremacy, and this seems to be just a continuation on that, where basically Willow has more qubits than the last chip that they had. And what that means is that they can perform a benchmark computation in under 5 minutes that would take 10 septillion or 10 to the power of 25 years for one of the fastest supercomputers in the world. The last time they made an announcement like this, other big quantum players like IBM had a lot of criticism for them. Quantum supremacy was kind of supposed to mean something, and people treated it as a bit of a marketing moment for Google. But the advancement in the chip is clear. I'll share my screen again and just take a look at the chart here, where you see just how many um, basically how much memory you have in a Sycamore chip versus in a Willow chip. It's kind of off the charts when compared to on an exponential, like on a log scale when compared to other chips that they had in the past. So,
Hmm.
all right, high level, Hunter, what's your take on it's NeurIPS week. Everybody's talking Gen AI. Google's talking Gen AI, which we'll get to, but they're dropping an advancement in quantum as well.
Yeah, so quantum computing in general is like, I don't know, it's cool, but and I've heard people talk about like, oh, this has the potential to change things like drug discovery and molecular modeling, and it has the potential to change financial modeling, and it's got, an impact on machine learning, and it's got impacts in cybersecurity. I've often heard cybersecurity experts talk about breaking, post quantum cryptography and
Yeah.
breaking all of the current encryption standards that we currently have. And I feel like I've been hearing about quantum computing and its advancements now for 5, 6 years at least. I'm still here waiting for a use case. And what I mean by that is I'm still here waiting for someone to say, we have delivered a drug that was researched using a quantum computer or something like that. Like make the potential use cases a reality. We deal with this exact same thing in the AI space. It's like make the potential use case a reality. That's kind of what I'm still waiting for. And while I think it's great that we're advancing scientific computing as quick as we are, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about it this morning. It really feels like 10 years ago, we maybe got a new advancement in supercomputing every 5 years. If we were lucky, someone built a new thing, did a top 500 run, it's now number one. Now we're on a release cycle where we're getting a new one every year, every 2 years that's like outdoing, oh, we broke the exaflop barrier. Oh, we broke two. Now we're going to break three. And the pace is just really, really picking up, right?
Yeah.
And so Um, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm still waiting on a real use case to be proven to prove that quantum computing has use cases and exists outside of the scientific community.
Yeah, it makes sense. So the big thing that jumps to mind for use cases is always cryptography, right? The idea
Hmm.
that if you can uh, factor large numbers very quickly with a quantum computer, something that was theoretically so hard to crack with a classical computer that it was protected is no longer protected. So people, adversaries, could be downloading your data that's currently encrypted and then be able to read it later if they have a quantum computer. Um, there's two things that jump to mind here. One is that we're on an exponential curve with quantum the way that we were on it with Moore's law and classical transistors, which, as with all exponentials, feels really slow at the beginning and then should get really fast later. But I think the jury's still out on the exact, um, you know, factor that we're on for the exponential. Like, are we talking about time spans of hundreds of years, tens of years, years, months? Like, clearly, we're not going to get a large quantum computer in months. But how fast can we implement Shor's algorithm on a quantum computer? Maybe it's 20 years away now. Maybe it's 10 years, and that's a huge change.
Hmm.
Um, but the thing about that the second thing it always reminds me of. So I'm a sports guy, like basketball, and a fan of the Toronto Raptors. And one year they drafted this guy Bruno Caboclo from Brazil, who was seen as like a really raw talent, like really far away. And the way they usually describe raw talent was somebody's 2 years away. Like, okay, you drafted him this year, but he's not going to play for another 2 years. He's got to develop, get bigger, get stronger,
Hmm.
things like that. And they described this guy as being so raw, he was 2 years away from being 2 years away. So, one of the all-time takes that I love. And so it seems like quantum is like 10 years away from being 10 years away from my
Yeah.
perspective. I'm so far away from understanding, okay, we went to 105 superconducting qubits on this system, which is like what's kind of buried in this, which is great. That's more qubits. And the coherence time is good for a system of this size, but smaller systems are 4 times better. Um, this is an advancement, clearly, and it cost a lot of money to make this advancement, but 100 qubits is not going to impact our daily life. And most estimates for practically useful applications are at the level of 1 million qubits.
Hmm.
So riding that exponential is going to take a long time, clearly, right?
Well, and that
Um,
goes back to, I'm still waiting for a use case comment that I just made, right? It's like if
yeah,
if it's going to take 1 million qubits for a practical application and it took us how many years to get to where we're at today, you can loosely extrapolate how long it's going to take us to where, quantum computing is something that um, becomes pervasive in the industry.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not, well, so as we maybe move on to the Gen AI section of the show, which is like the next 90% of the time we're going to talk, um, it's funny that people criticize Gen AI for having real applications, even though like I use it every day, right? Like
Right.
I clearly have access to a generative AI model. I use it. And then people are still like, I'm waiting for a business case. I'm waiting for ROI. And then it seems like the same people, maybe it's not the exact same people, but it seems like the same people are now excited about quantum. You're like, wait a second, you can't do both of these things. You can't be like a Gen AI truther and like a like a quantum, hype guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, um,
Yeah. Well, the people who are still waiting for a use case probably don't use Gen AI as heavily as we do in our daily lives. So,
yeah, okay, so let's get into that. As I said at the beginning, there was a big week for NeurIPS. You sent me this article, The Limits of Intelligence, Why AI Advancement Could Be Slowing Down. What was your initial take on this? There's a mention of GPT-5 in here, which is still not released.
right, GPT-5, and it also mentions Anthropic, their model Opus, that was delayed, and um, basically the article kind of goes on to quote Scale AI founder Alexander Wang, who said that we could be hitting the quote unquote data wall, which is we've literally run out of data to train models, and so now we're going to start using AI to generate synthetic data to train AI. Did we
Yeah,
just create a feedback loop that essentially halts progress or at least slows it down, right? That's kind of the question that he's asking in this interview. Um, and it it almost goes counterintuitive to everything that every major enterprise storage company has been saying for the last 10 years, where it's like, we're creating zettabytes of data every day. And so you need to buy more disks. Like,
yeah,
you've heard that message, right? Like, I think we've all heard that message over
yeah.
and over again about, like, by 2035 we'll be creating data in a factor of what NASA hasn't even named yet as a
Yeah,
capacity.
every presentation to convince somebody to upgrade their SAN with a new controller
Yeah.
starts with some justification based on the total amount of data on all of the internet combined with, which is an like a very rough estimate by IDC or something.
Right. And
Like,
so I'm sitting here asking the question, like, how are we hitting a data wall if we're generating, Yoda bytes of data every day or whatever you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
how do we
pick your Greek prefix here. I don't know how much
exactly,
it is.
exactly.
So, yeah, the well, and this is it's funny because at NeurIPS I got the chance to watch virtually the Latent Space podcast guys put
Hmm.
on a live event, Patel versus Frankel, the great scaling debate, quote unquote, the thriller on chinchilla, where they talked about, or were supposed to talk about exactly this topic,
Yeah.
where, the claim for years for language models is that there's a scaling law. In other words, you can pump in exponentially more, uh, let's say, compute in terms of the aggregate flops that you use to train the model. So both a bigger model and trained for longer on more data. And you will see a linear improvement in performance.
Hmm.
That was kind of the law when GPT-2 came out. You just make it bigger, train it on more data, and GPT-3 is better than GPT-2. And based on how much better it is, you can predict GPT-1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And I think the guys in this debate did a really, frankly, bad job of staying on topic and agreeing to some basic premises because they
Hmm.
started to talk about return on investment and say that exponentially more money doesn't return exponentially more investment on that capital, which is not the technical point of a scaling law, right?
Right.
Supposed to be a technical statement, but is the more relevant question because we're never going to test that technical statement empirically if people are not willing to do the $100 billion training run because they don't think they're
Hmm.
going to get ROI. Um, so, okay, let's just connect it back to why AI advancements are limited. The the scaling debate seems that to me that GPT-4 class models effectively capped out the performance they could achieve on popular benchmarks like MMLU. Like you're at 90+% on these benchmarks. And so what happens? People start looking for other benchmarks to measure the quality
Hmm.
of this models, like software engineering, like its capability with vision, like its capability with video, like its generative capability with images, like its capability with input audio. And the thing about that is that suddenly there's new benchmarks where the models perform at effectively 0%. An old model could not input that modality of data. And
Right.
so now there's a new scaling law in the domain of audio, in the domain of video, in the domain of images. The um, and so this connects back to the point about data, which is to say, we've effectively, it seems, the research community has effectively run out of human generated language tokens on the internet. People's writing, people's audio speech transcribed into data. There's like 30 trillion tokens. There's like 30 terabytes of data out there of like news articles and books and transcriptions. And that's it. It's just like humans can only generate so much data themselves. And there's two ways to keep making progress. One is generate text data with language models that the language models use to train on, which seems like it would improve performance to me on specific benchmarks, but not general reasoning because that's just the snake eating its tail.
Right.
But there's this whole other thing about like text is really small. So where is there more data? There's lots of images, lots of video, lots of audio files, lots of geospatial data. There's lots of, 3D CAD stuff. There's like all sorts of data sources that are not text. And the to me, the jury's out on whether there will be a similar scaling law for the transformer model in video generation, image generation, audio transcription, and similar benchmarks as there was in MMLU for text.
So
Uh,
you
yeah,
have to imagine that would change though if we go down the path of, instead of one giant model that does everything 80% well, we have 10 models that do one thing 100% well, or 96% well, or whatever the metric you're trying to go after is. You have to imagine that scaling law would change because the modality is now changing. And okay,
yeah.
great. And to your point, right? We may have hit a data wall with human generated text to feed models, but we haven't hit a data wall on images. We haven't hit a data wall on video. We haven't hit a data wall on, like you said, CAD drawings, or 3D models from something like Autodesk's Maya for use in video games. Like, I mean,
Gene
there's,
sequences just start
yeah.
sequencing all these machines or all this stuff. I mean, we saw it with, for example, DeepMind's release of GenCast that we talked about last week in the weather forecasting space, and then we saw it in the AlphaFold space with the protein structure prediction, which is, it seems to me that the transformer architecture is so powerful as a concept. Next token prediction is basically so powerful that you can apply it to all sorts of other domains and then have a scaling law in that domain. But
Hmm.
there's two issues with this. One is that in the first domain this started with in text, it seems like we're at a point of diminishing returns. Jonathan Frankel was on the scaling will not continue side of the debate, where he said things like, where is Claude 3.5 Opus? Where is GPT-5? Where is Llama 4? We got Llama 3, Llama 3.1, Llama 3.2, Llama 3.3 now. Where is Llama 4? That exponentially bigger, you know, you just released 405B. Where's the 4 trillion parameter MOE model that's open source that's just so good at everything? And
Hmm.
well, the point is that MMLU is you can't linearly scale past 100% correct on that benchmark. That like you you can linearly scale or predict improvements in the model from 0% to 100%, but that's always a diminishing return thing. You never reach
Hmm.
100% in quality benchmarks unless you've overfit, and you can't scale past 100%. You can't get better than 100% on a test. So we're
You
effectively
mean a
limited by
model?
the
You mean a model can't give 110% every day? Business harder, Jordan.
Yeah. You got me thinking like we need John Madden coaching
Yeah.
ChatGPT to give me some more tokens. Come on, think harder, O1 Pro. Yeah, no, you can't. Yeah, talking about practice. Lots of sports episodes on sports references on this episode here. So yeah, I don't know. I think look, people can have their own opinions about this stuff and their opinions specifically about the quality of the benchmarks, as well as the like, you know, I don't know, the like actual uh definition of a scaling law, because it seems like for some reason everybody has a personal opinion about what scaling means
Hmm.
now. I want to share a tweet from Jeremy Howard, um, which plays on some of the AGIs here, right? He says, possibly some folks at OpenAI don't really know what tasks most humans do. Their survey with 1,800 votes says, can O1, the model from
Right.
OpenAI that powers ChatGPT, do most of the tasks you did yesterday from when you got up in the morning to when you went to bed at night? Somehow 89.6% of people said no. 10.4% said yes. 1 in 10 people think that a language model on the internet did everything when they could have done everything from when they got up in the morning to when they went to bed at night. These people
Is
like
does somebody
don't
have
cook
these
breakfast or fold laundry or like have a
exactly?
human conversation one to one.
I want to know who these 10% of people are that magically somehow got access to Elon Musk's like robots that are being powered by LLMs to like cook breakfast and you know I want to who are the 10% of people that said yeah it could pretty much do everything from the
Well,
time I
I
got
think
up to do you not eat? Do you not like, go to the bathroom? Do you not like
I think they, yeah, I think they maybe had a assumption that tasks meant like
writing
productive
an
tasks
email?
at
Yeah,
work or
or yep.
something.
Yep.
And it's like, could O1 with the right prompt by the right person have generated all of the text or code that you generated during the day for you?
Hmm.
And like with that really, really like accommodating interpretation for what this is, I still think it's BS.
Oh yeah,
Like,
100%.
but like you can, yeah. I was scrolling around and I saw this picture that somebody took of some startup in San Francisco's ad on a bus shelter. uh, Startups called Artisan. Artisans won't complain about work-life balance. The era of employees is here. And then, somebody down on their luck is sitting back, resting their head on the bus shelter. One of the most dystopian
Uh-huh.
pictures and clear like capture of the difference where there's really advanced knowledge workers who are thinking that their whole purpose in life or job is to roll over, plug themselves into the matrix and generate tokens, and they don't do anything else. And the realities of like people walking around on the street not really agreeing with that. Like
Hmm.
most of my friends in normal life if I say Claude, they will not know what that is. It'll
Right.
be like, your buddy? Like, who's
Yeah,
Claude?
you got a friend named Claude? Why have I never met this guy?
Like, yeah. Um, okay, whatever. That was a bit of
Well,
a
no, so I did want to point out too, if 10% of people that responded to that survey truly believe that O1 could have done all of the tasks throughout the day. Let's say they've got this like very favorable, we're limiting this to tasks at work. What do you do for work?
That's knowledge work, man.
Dude,
Knowledge work.
I seriously, I'm like, what the hell do you do for a living that the entirety of your day O1 can just do? Because I mean, I feel like that's the question that we should be asking about this survey.
Yeah, you've heard the term email job before, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yep,
Like,
pretty much. I take the
yeah.
specs from the engineers or from the customers and I give them to the engineers.
Yeah, you're a people person.
I'm a people person.
Yeah, yeah. Now we're referencing my virtual background from last week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I don't know. Like the implication that O1 is going to completely replace people's jobs with the right prompting and the right interface is totally reasonable. Totally, I could totally understand that. But and we've talked about these barriers for a while. The like self-described, I'm nervous about this, and the dependence on it, I don't get. Maybe I'm just coming in at the right time where I learned how to program and learned about Linux before these tools existed.
Hmm.
But I've seen a few stories from students, and specifically had a conversation with a friend recently who's trying to go through resumes right now, and he's basically on Zoom calls with people reading ChatGPT responses back to him. Um, and he's trying to ask them technical questions, right? And
Yeah.
he's like, "This is I can see your eyes doing it, and I can get the same description with like a similar prompt to whatever you did when I
Right.
searched ChatGPT myself." And so there's this combination of like clearly the cost of um, cognition has gone down. You can buy it or get it for free with a ChatGPT login, right?
Hmm.
Um, but the actual interaction, those little wrinkles, those really important moments when you have to think outside the box or take an answer and make an action, it's still hard to not have a human in the loop. And the idea, so Sam Altman made a statement this last week. He was talking about how OpenAI went down for 4 hours, and he hadn't realized until that point how much he depends on ChatGPT to do his job.
Hmm.
And that was shocking to me because, like I said, I use these tools. I feel like I'm ahead of the curve on explaining some code, generating some code, asking questions, getting a response. Other
Yeah.
people don't have the short circuit in their brain yet to switch Google search to Perplexity or ChatGPT, depending on what you're trying to find,
Hmm.
or to a coding assistant in your IDE. They kind of just still Google and click on links and search through and copy and paste. And that takes longer and it's lower quality for a lot of things. Or they're just banging away matplotlib code. And I'm like, dude, a model can do this. Like, it can make a graph for you, dude. Come
Yeah.
on. Right. Um, but the idea that like if because I've had endpoints go down, the idea that a model going down would just like make me as like an engineer not be able to do my job, and Sam Altman is a CEO.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I
he's
mean,
outsourcing critical decisions to this model. Is he asking for pros and cons charts for every decision he wants? He wants a T chart for every decision he's got to make or something. What's going on?
yeah, well, I mean, you saw this like um when the host that we have went down for a power upgrade
Yeah.
and it was down for like 4 days. And I don't know about you, but I started getting a lot of angry Slack messages from people like, where the hell is this thing? I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah. 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 Nothing is more permanent than a demo, dude.
Yeah,
It's like 84 users have a login on that thing now, and
I know.
it's like I
Did
didn't.
we just sign ourselves up for SLAs by sharing this to people? Like, do we have like a are we now owing people a certain service level agreement now where it's like we have to have at least 4 nines of availability on this thing because so many people are now depending on it to do their jobs on a day-to-day basis.
It's not 4 nines or 5 nines. It's like if it goes down, you get the three G's. You get grief, you get guilt, and you get give me it back. Come on.
I love that. That's so funny.
I signed up for a
So
GLA, the you give me grief if I don't hit my my level of agreement. Yeah.
couple comments I wanted to make. So that experience that your buddy had, I also have a friend that's had the exact same experience. And the craziest thing about it is he's trying to hire ML ops guys. He's trying to hire data engineers and data scientists. And these people are coming to the interview and straight up reading off of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And it does require a certain level of knowledge about this space to even know what to ask. So I'm not saying that these people don't know anything, but you have to ask yourself, and this kind of leads into the second part of my comment, is you have to ask yourself, are we walking the same fine line that we were walking back in the 90s when Google came out? Where there were a lot of critics of search engines in general, not just Google, but Google got most of the heat because they're Google. Um, was are we collectively bringing down the general intelligence of humanity with everything just a search away? Meaning, like, why would I learn that when I can just Google it? That was
Yeah.
a common phrase I remember when I was in high school, right? It's like, why do I need to learn this when I can just Google it? Um, and we're starting to basically see the exact same pattern repeat itself with generative AI, where it's like, well, why would I write that code when I can just tell, Nemotron 70B to do it for me?
Yeah. So you can know when it's wrong. I like
Yeah.
the I can go back even further to calculators, like simple
Hmm.
elementary school stuff. Why should I learn long division? I can just use this calculator. Why should I learn the quadratic equation? Why should I learn what a hypotenuse is? What's the point of a polynomial equation? And then people grow up and are like, why did nobody teach me about mortgage rates and what the impact of a mortgage rate has on my loan?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, guys, like I know we should probably have a section in school or a course to talk to you about like
Personal
interest
finance.
rates and
Yeah.
yeah, stuff like that, the application of this stuff, but it does require fundamentals. You know,
Hmm.
you need to learn, and maybe the way this stuff is taught currently is not the best way, but you need to learn fundamentals of how an operating system works, computer hardware, data structures, algorithms, to be able to reason about an ML ops pipeline, to know the basics of what a container is before you click deploy on some pipeline. Like
Right.
there's no substitute for a fundamental understanding of the fundamentals, but there's totally a substitute for access to information and reasoning, improving your reasoning. Um, I like ChatGPT is not a crutch, it's a tool in the tool belt if
Yeah.
used correctly.
Yep.
The but I heard somebody say basically that these models seem to make the median software developer better.
Hmm.
They're effectively useless for junior people because they don't have the reasoning capability yet. They haven't they don't have a full mental model of all the pieces of the system, and the model can't replace that. And then the most advanced, most experienced people doing the most important cutting edge things, currently kind of find the models slow them down.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
I
this
think,
bulk of the middle that really needs to be used, using the models correctly, I would say. Um, the
well,
same as a Google search or a calculator.
right. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I'm in 100% agreement with you on that. It's just a question that I feel like keeps coming up over and over again in the media and things like that about like, because right when people started using ChatGPT to write, essays and stuff like that for school, people were like, oh my God, we're, dumbing down the population because I don't have to do schoolwork anymore. I can just have ChatGPT do it. But like, I don't know that that's actually a widespread thing that's happening. And I think to your point, right? Like the median developer in that example is going to get a lot more out of a coding assistant because they have enough context that they understand two things. They understand the overall structure of the application and they understand when what is being generated is incorrect and will break something. um they can like for me, right, I know Python really well. I can generate Python code and I can look at it and go, well, that's not going to compile.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I totally agree. I think in an interesting way, it's just one of those things where the pie is growing.
Hmm.
So, for example, um, way back in the day, before my day, I shouldn't say way back in the day,
Back in my
uh,
day.
in in like medieval times, there was the story was basically like reading and writing is for the aristocrats, and the
Hmm.
underclass is not. Reading and writing is not for them. They are the farmers and they work with their hands. And if you were to ask an aristocrat at that point, hey, who do you think is capable of reading and writing? They would have said, oh, only like the top 1% of the population that has the fancy robes and has the money and comes from a good family. It's not for the peasants. And that's obviously wrong. Like most of the population can read and write today. Like
Hmm.
very small cases don't have that capability. And you can take that to calculators and math. You can take that to Google search. You can take that to ChatGPT. And I think specifically in the case of software, the biggest trend I've seen is that now software development, application development is accessible to people who before did not have the motivation or the skills or the background to even know where to start. It's lowering the barrier to entry, and now people in natural language can prompt and build a demo application, deploy it to Vercel, and be like, I've got a startup now. I'm a
Yeah.
idea yapper guy, but I don't even need a technical co-founder because my technical co-founder is the software engineer, is ChatGPT. And now that person has some success and they need to scale this thing to 10,000 users. And they're like, oh, shoot, a model can't do that. Like, I need some help.
Yeah.
Now I need a technical co-founder. So, yeah,
I'm still waiting for a model that can generate PowerPoints because then we're really screwed, right? Like everybody's going to be generating pitch decks to go along with their generated their
dude,
idea.
the amount of like LinkedIn bait posts with clearly AI generated
Slop.
images in the background and stuff is hilarious.
I
Like
know. It really
these
is.
yeah, it's and just the content, man. Like it's slop. But maybe
Well,
let's
I was gonna say, speaking of kind of related to this topic, right? Like, since we brought up the AI slop, right? I
oh,
had
you
sent
stole my
this
segue
article.
here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you were gonna segue into
No,
this.
I like
Like,
it. I like it.
a lot of people who maintain open source projects out there, like very heavily used, very popular open source projects, claim that they are drowning in junk bug reports that are written by AI. I love this quote here from Seth Larson. Recently, I've noticed an uptick in extremely low quality, spammy, and LLM hallucinated security reports to open source projects. Um, I read this and go, man, I would really hate to be a software developer maintaining an open source project if this is the future, right? Like Um, and it's kind of stupid because if you actually read the article, what he's saying is a lot of these bug reports are because AI told them it's a security flaw. So they submitted an AI generated bug report. And it's like, okay, but what if the model is wrong and it's not a security flaw? You just created a problem that didn't need to exist.
Yeah, he said in the article, Larson argued that low quality reports should be treated as if they're malicious.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about xzutils on the last episode.
Yeah.
This is this is a perfect conclusion from the guy. I completely agree. Um, yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were just saying. Like the software engineering or the research or just the work that the expert developers are doing, which open source maintainers are like the experts
Mm-hmm.
in my definition of junior to senior. They are the people generating tokens that have not been generated before. They are the people writing a new book, writing a new news article, not regurgitating other stuff, copy and pasting it and changing the skin, and now that's your mobile app. They are writing the fundamentals that other people use to build their applications. And it is the last place that will fall in the dominoes of OpenAI models taking over everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's so yeah, it seems like it's a bit of a mess. The the other thing this made me think of is just um, what uh, backlash there's going to be against this. Like, what sort of like we're going to turn uh, the Linux Foundation into Luddites or something if we keep doing this. People are just
Yeah.
going to start banning the use of ChatGPT, which is, it's an overcorrection, one direction that results in an overcorrection back the other way. Um,
So there was some talk I remember earlier this year about institute for situations exactly like this, instituting some sort of like verified human process
yeah.
so that like we could potentially cut down on a lot of this spam. Um, I'm wondering if even something as basic as that starts to get implemented. Like, hey, you have to be like an actual human being and a verified contributor to this project to be able to submit a bug, you know, issue, whatever, right? Um, I don't know if that's the answer. It's just something that kind of popped into my head as we were talking about this. Um, that there was at one point in time that was like the big buzz is like this whole concept of like we need people to like verify that they're a human being and then they can do XYZ. Otherwise, the
Yeah,
bots are going to overrun us.
I just don't understand. I mean, somebody can pass a CAPTCHA
Yeah,
to submit a report and then still copy and paste in something that was
right.
generated by the model. I don't understand how they would get around that. I think it's just a matter of building reputation and which is the kind of the fundamental way in which all social media seems to work.
Yeah,
People may get upset at this, but like I would view GitHub as social media. People have an account, they log in, they get reputation, they publish their things, they get comments. It's just technical compared to Twitter or Instagram or something like that. And
yeah.
the issues that people have with bots always seems to stem from uh, somebody who's gamed the initial checks. They've gotten enough comments and whatever that now they can let the bot start flying. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's a simple check on this stuff to not let people open issues or open or send PRs to some important repo unless they pass some level of uh, reputation on the hosting site.
But
Um,
a a counterpoint to that is Reddit has this problem today. So a lot of the popular Reddit communities have instituted a if you want to post here, you must have 50 comment karma.
Yeah, right.
And so the people who are running the bots said, okay, well, I'm going to offer random person $1,000 for their Reddit account that has 50 karma, and then I'm going to use that for my bot to post things,
Yeah.
right? So like people just are going to keep gaming the system, even though we're trying to put these arbitrary rules in place to prevent these bots from spamming everybody. There's always somebody who's going to figure out a way to game the system.
Yeah. 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 I
Because
mean,
like
it's
buying accounts has been, I mean, that's been an issue since like the instant messenger days of like Yahoo and AIM and MSN Messenger, right? Of like people buying other people's accounts that have some sort of good standing or reputation and then using those as spam bots.
yeah. I mean, it totally makes sense. The look there, it's I think it's going to impact all sorts of, we talked about how much of an impact this has had on hiring
Mm-hmm.
remote workers, uh, on people trying to maintain software and just interact on the internet. Like you can kind of make the assumption that like 90% of what you see on the internet, from news articles to random posts, is just generated by AI now, and there's no real people. Because one person who with a bot can, or 1,000 bots can just drown out every reasonable human trying to make a comment. Like
Mm-hmm.
they can just generate so much stuff. And then the impact on like just email jobs, just work. I mean, um, it's exposing a lot of the lying, hiding, and faking that's going on in the knowledge work economy right now,
Yeah.
overall, which uh, which is interesting. Move to wrap
Lying,
with one
hiding,
more
and
fun thing here. Yeah, sorry.
lying, hiding, and faking. That's like the ABCs of corporate America.
I mean, yeah, that's why
There's
I'm.
a hot take for you.
Jeez. Take it easy, dude. Um, uh, okay, I want to show one more, um, little demo here. So,
Sure.
uh, just to wrap it up, somebody who's not lying, hiding, and faking about how cool their releases are the week of NeurIPS is Google, with Gemini 2.0 Flash that you can try out, aistudio.google.com. Not that I'm advertising for them or anything, but it's just so fascinating.
Google
Real
doesn't need your
time.
help advertising.
Yeah, right. Yeah. On their platform, YouTube. Comment below if they ran an ad before you watch this video here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So point is that you can stream video and audio directly to the model and get audio back. Um, if you don't want to try it out with Google, go check out Cerebrus's demo. I think they've got, what is the Cerebrus one? Let me pull this up. Uh, inference.cerebrus.ai.
Yeah, I was playing around with this after you sent it to me. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, try the voice in, voice out. And it's
Yeah.
it's real time, right? Which is just an unbelievable experience. They also, Google also released an update to Notebook LM, which we commented on previously, where you can generate like a 15-minute pretty engaging podcast based on some up to 50 news articles, website links, PDFs, whatever. It would process them all and then generate the audio with like state-of-the-art audio quality. The new update from Notebook LM, you can interact with the podcast hosts. You can ask them questions and
That's
get responses.
crazy.
Like, I mean, really cool stuff coming out of the sleeping giant has woken up in terms of our coverage from the last couple of weeks with GenCast, AlphaFold,
Yeah.
uh, AI Studio, Notebook LM updates.
One of the funny things to me about it is that what what we're talking about right now 10 years ago was the vision that Amazon and Apple and Google had for their little home voice assistants, Alexa or whatever, right? Like 10 years ago when they released these home voice assistants, that was the vision that they had in mind. The end result experience um, was a stupid robotic sounding voice that could barely keep track of my grocery list, much less perform any meaningful tasks.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh great, I can tell this stupid cylinder to turn my lights on and off. Like, who gives a shit? Like,
yeah,
but like I feel like now we're to the point where you've seen Apple announce this, right? That they're using ChatGPT to make Siri better, and they're using like they're basically getting these audio to audio models in as fast as they can, so that a voice assistant truly is a voice assistant in the vision that they had in mind, and not what it has been for the last 10 years. So I think
yeah.
that part is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, all aboard the multimodal exponential curves with these scaling laws, man. And when it
Yeah.
comes to uh, non-text, we've seen, look, we've seen how powerful text and code is,
Hmm.
and like maybe there's edge cases. We're missing some code in some old languages that we'd like to add to these models, and those will improve some things over time. Or
Cobol.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I've had some conversations with some people I work with in Asia Pacific, and they just kind of commented on like, yeah, like America seems to really enjoy these English models. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that, you
Yeah.
know, all of the tokens on the internet are English, and I am so privileged that English is my native language, and
Hmm.
other people are not having this experience right now
Right.
because it's not working in Japanese or Thai or Korean or
Hmm.
whatever language you prefer.
Yeah.
So, there's like
It's
how
quite
many
the wake up
languages in
call.
India? Like, yeah,
Right.
like,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is quite the wake up call when you put it in that perspective of like I can use these assistants, if you will, to help me be more effective at my day-to-day job because English is my native language. Like that's a crazy thought.
yeah, yeah. No, I was really. It took traveling to some of these countries
Hmm.
to actually experience it because I worked with lots of people who are immigrants or who attend conferences here and are kind of working, but and you can always like have different experiences depending on their experience with English. Like some people
Sure.
have an accent, some people don't know what you're saying. A lot of people on Teams calls will turn the transcription on so they can read what you're saying because they can't really hear it as fast. And like you want to be open and accommodating to it. But when I traveled there and I talked to some people and then built those relationships and came back and now get that input, it's like the difference in daily life interaction compared to see somebody at a conference and have an English conversation with somebody who's originally from Japan is like
Hmm.
very, very different.
Yep.
Um, and even just, somebody at a restaurant or a corner store going skiing in Japan is like very different than um, typical tourist spot or person who's working for an English speaking American based company.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, gaining that perspective was cool. I'd encourage everybody who can to just, you know, pay attention to that stuff because it's crazy to um, be so surprised at something so simple.
Yeah.
Like I don't, it's something that's obvious about these models. Oh, it's English, it's code. Like it's an American company, and obviously it's not going to be usable for the person in Korea who has a phone from SK Telecom and it's like a different operating system based on Android. They're like, actually, the government bans Google Maps and we you can't get satellite. I was like, I went to Korea and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to get around without Google Maps. How am I going to find this office? I'm becoming
Yeah.
so dependent on this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I've got three letters for you. VPN.
All right, man. And
I'm
with that,
all joking aside. Yeah.
yeah,
With
yeah.
that.
with that, a week after Korea declared martial law and how to change a government, and Hunter suggested circumventing their laws there. Yeah, let's wrap
Hey
up this
man,
show.
I'm already probably on lists, like, and I just added myself to another one. I really don't care. Like, I live in the United States where like warrantless wiretapping is legal. Like, it doesn't really faze me.
Okay, this
On that
maybe
note,
is Friday the 13th, the scariest episode of things we read this week, finishing off the way it started, trying to scare our audience. Thank you, Hunter Almgren, for putting the first uh, subscript label on one of our videos from Google. I wonder what it's going to say. What are we going to be labeled as here? Mature audiences only.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. You really need to change that on our YouTube channel, by the way.
All right. Nice job. Take care.